So this is my custom-built 27 by 40 detached garage. And this video is about the last 3 years I spent getting from start to mostly finished building this. And so if you happen to be looking to build one of these yourself, I'm going to share with you some tips that will make it a lot easier for you than it was for me, because frankly there was no videos for me, particularly to the fact that I built this on a 5% slope. Made it a little extra challenging than the standard DIY backyard barn build. And so let's first take a tour and see what it looks like, and then we'll go over the complicated details about how I came about finishing this project. Okay, so we just finished wiring this, and that's what I meant by mostly finished. The actual measurements are 27 by 40 long, 10-foot ceilings, and we've got the 8-foot porch extension. 5% slope is over there. We'll get to that in a minute. As we go to the porch, we've got a man door, we've got some windows, got a porch light, and we've got 4 can lights just in case I happen to want to hang out on the patio some night and barbecue. Probably never going to happen, but you never know. We've also got 2 exterior plugs out here as well. Make sure you put those in if you're going to be wiring stuff. Coming inside though, it's a bit of a mess, but this wasn't made for showtime. It's just what it is. So we're still in the process of organizing as the hard work just got finished. If you happen to be using this for cars, in a 27 by 40 space, you could park 4 automobiles in here easily. You could probably park 5 or 6 if you wanted to get really creative, or if they just happen to be very small cars. But in my case, I'm using it mostly for toys, hobbies, some automotive work, mostly for storage though. That's what the primary purpose of the building is. I've got a workbench over here. Now that the wiring is done, we're going to be putting some shelving over there and some insulation and some sheetrock. So once again, my wife asked me once, when is the project actually done? Well, frankly, with a workshop, it's never done. But in the future, what we're going to do, so this is going to be, this is our workbench, cabinets, plywood storage. We'll have a lumber rack back there. There'll probably be shelving across the top here for more lumber as well. Over here is going to be more cabinets across the top most likely, and across the bottom. And then back there is generally just going to be, kind of storage like we currently have, for ladder racks and whatever makes sense back there for tall stuff that's just kind of in the way all the time. That's kind of the long-term plan of how I plan to organize this shop. That part starts next. Moving on, we do have an upstairs attic. Bonus storage was kind of the main reason I chose to go with a stick frame building over a pole barn. It's also a bit of a mess up here, but I wouldn't let that discourage you. It's, once again, not really pretty. It's just waiting for the next mess to get cleaned up so I can make another mess. Anyways, plenty of room up here to put stuff. We do have attic trusses. That was also part of the reason, I think. 7-foot ceilings up top here, so it's not exactly tall. More like, it's probably 7'6". But, if I leave the sheetrock out, I've actually got a lot of weight capacity I can put up here because the sheetrock, I think I did the math, and it's about 4,000 pounds almost for sheetrock and insulation. So when you got bonus storage, make sure your weight counts. We will probably insulate and finish it up there someday, but it's just a lot of money and not a lot of gain. My biggest complaints with attic storage right now just tends to be that it gets hot up there in the summer, and right now it's near freezing outside. And so that's kind of a question if I want to keep on going as is. You can see from my garage door opener that it's currently 39 degrees in here. It's also 12:33 p.m. in case you were wondering what time it was. But anyways, so yeah, just a little bit cold in here. I'm not sure if it's freezing is really a risk inside yet. It doesn't tend to get that cold around this part of the country. Anyways, I guess I can turn the lights on before I leave real fast, but so yeah, plenty of lights. If you're wondering about the lighting that we went with, so I've got basically 4 rows of 3 here. These are just lights I picked up at home at Lowe's actually, and they are the plug-in variety. This was not something I thought about ahead of time, but you have the idea of, I've got fixed mount lights upstairs since there's low clearance, but down here I chose plug-in varieties mostly because they're easy to replace later, and with an unfinished ceiling, in case something falls in the light, I actually want the plug just to come undone rather than the whole electrical connection to become undone. So it's a little bit safer, I feel. Cost difference is negligible. There is no cost difference. But yeah, just one thing to think about. Plugins, that's next. What we went ahead and did, at countertop level, we've got 4 double gangs here. All GFCI, of course. On the back wall, there's 3 knee-high, and then there's 4 countertop levels on this wall. And then I've got 4 plugs that back up in the bonus room up there as well. That's going to help with something annoying in the future. I know it will. Who knows, maybe the kids will want to play video games up there someday. I don't know. And then we've got 1 exterior plug on the outside of the wall here. This is the farthest back part of the shop and the kind of a back section of the property where you're eventually going to want to plug to something. So anyways, that's there. Then the electricians, they had some bonus wiring, so they went ahead and put a welder plug here just in case I need it. And so who knows what I'll use it for, but it's there just in case. So anyways, plenty of plugs. No, I'm not power happy in this building, so it's nothing exciting, but it's more than enough for me. All right, now out on the porch here, this isn't finished yet. I still have to put some stonework around the columns and then finish the ceilings up here. But anyways, so we've got all pressure treated wood. That's local code requirement. Don't worry about all these X's are just framing braces I never took down. The inspector had some questions about that too, but yeah, if it's not hurting anything, why worry about it? Anyways, on my roofs, I do have 18-inch eaves on all sides. Helps keep the foundation dry and prevents runoff, all that. I mean, make sure you put eaves if you are. It's not usually required to be on the plans, but we added that ourselves. Here's where we get to the foundation work that made this a little more complicated. So this is a 4-foot tall foundation wall, which is what kind of fixes the slope here. I'll walk away while I'm over here and you can kind of see what the building's built on. So yeah, you can see here, this is a drop off back there in the shade, which is kind of hard to see in the lighting. Maybe I can get a better angle. But yeah, so that's what made this difficult. Now in our particular scenario, there was an old building here before. And that old building, well, the last owner tore it down because I guess after 40 years it had fallen over and rotted out. It was actually built slab on grade. So I've got some pictures of that I can show you. And that's where the project kind of started. It was just, we had a slab that was kind of questionable and left with rebar. The previous homeowner had told me that maybe the next owner would want to build a basketball court on top of it, which makes zero sense. Why would anybody want to put a basketball court on top of a bunch of pokey rebar and an uneven slab, but whatever. Yeah, so interesting story there. But that's what made this project extra difficult, because originally I would have just chose a pole barn on flat level ground, just throw it up, it's done and easier, right? But in this particular case, I would have had to have an engineered retaining wall to hold up the pole barn. And at that time, the cost of getting that done with a pole barn would have been the same cost as a stick frame. And with the stick frame, you get bonus storage upstairs, and plus it's a lot easier to finish at that point. It's also going to be a drier building because the way that they're built with a stem wall. So anyways, in the end, I think a stick frame is just a better building. So if you can build one and the cost makes sense, I would go stick frame. But that's why we went stick frame instead of pole barn. Back on topic though, and here we have that's the exterior plug I was talking about. So you can see this is the corner of the property. That's the neighbor's well house. And so yeah, it's just kind of nice to have something at the backside when I want to build a fence or something. You never know when you're going to need a plug off there. This will all get finished someday and turn into kind of a parking spot for a trailer probably. And this will be stairs and not just a pile of ankle-breaking rubbish. But yeah, that's kind of the barn in a nutshell. Not the fanciest, but total cost, I would say 2023 when I built this. And once again, we have done garage door, concrete work, framing, roofing, siding, paint. I think we're about $85,000 in. This is in Oregon, Washington County, if that matters to you. And so, yeah, it's about an $85,000 project with the electrical done. $75,000 without electrical. So yeah, it's not a cheap project by any means. It's definitely not a $30,000 pole barn built in a day, but that's not where we live, so that's just what I had to build. I do think this will stand the test of time though and be a real good workshop for whoever lives here in the future too, so yeah. Okay, now I guess we'll go on to the story of how we got it built. Well, for starters, like I said, when we started, we just had a bare slab to work with, and I had to remove that. Had a local excavator come by, and we scooped up all the old concrete and pea gravels and hauled it off and got it taken care of that way. And that was one of those easy parts of the project for me. I also, one second here, I forgot I can show that. This messy leafy area over here was this concrete burn I put in. So this was an area. This was all a strange triangular slab in the beginning, so to prepare the project I had to remove that. I excavated this down to about 2 feet and filled it all with road base and 3/4 minus. The idea was to create an area for my truss trucks and gravel trucks to be able to turn around when they got here. So that was also part of the excavation process of getting the original slab removed. After that, before that even actually, one of those parts, I had to remove at least 4 trees. That was fun in itself. And then, next part of the project was also easy enough for me in that it was just involved hiring a local concrete contractor, and they did all the flat work, the foundations and all that stuff was poured by them. That was easy. Then I had to get to work at that point. That's when the framing started. So we chose to frame it myself. I am not by trade a framer. I am a contractor, but I'm not a framer. And so that was extra challenging for me. I've worked around framers most of my life, but I don't know framing code that well. So I did have a friend who was knowledgeable on the subject, and he gave me a hand how he could, and we took care of that. But yeah, let's go back to the beginning though. This is the part that if you're looking to build one of these yourselves, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get yourself an architect or an engineering firm. So in my case, I went with a structural engineering firm. Believe it or not, this took me a year to find somebody who would even take the job. Building a workshop is not exactly exciting to architects and engineers. But anyways, for the cost of about $8,000, they custom designed me these plans that the county would accept for my building permit application. That was also not easy, and about 6 months of headaches, but after that was accepted, that got us going. So yeah, getting the plans is the first struggle you're going to deal with. Usually you can buy them off the internet if your property is flat and easy to build on. In my case, I needed an engineer anyways because we had to build the retaining walls, and so you just weren't going to get out of that. And so might as well have them do the entire project. Anyways, yeah, that was a lot of waiting. That's why my first year I got nothing done. Year 2 though, we finally got the slab work poured and got the framing like I was just talking about. So after the framing, of course, roof went up and all that, and we did all that ourselves. So roofing was just unusually hot. I tried to get to that before the summer was hot. I was doing it in May, but it was still roasting hot and in the 90s, so that didn't happen. Pretty much the entire project was plagued by bad weather. We had snow, rain, ice, high winds, and hot sun no matter what. So I don't think I had a single nice day working on the project over about a year. Anyways. Okay, now as the framing, it kind of came with its own set of challenges. It's pretty quick for the most part. I mean, usually when you say someone builds a house pretty quickly, framing is what they're usually talking about. Because I think all in all, we probably spent maybe a week framing it, working as a team, with a second phase being when the trusses went up. But problems we had with framing for the most part, first off, me being an inexperienced framer and couldn't wait to start the project before I had some advice, just started to start framing a wall by myself, and I was told later on that, there's different ways to frame. There's production style framing, which is to do as fast and efficiently as you can. That's when you usually build the wall on the ground and then raise the wall. Mind you, these are 10-foot walls on a stem wall. It's kind of hard to get a wall on top of a stem wall by yourself. So yeah, we used wall jacks for that, I meant. So the window wall here, we did that with the wall jacks. This wall and then the back wall we did kind of framed in place, mostly because it just made the most sense. We also did the garage door wall with the wall jacks too, especially because that big beams that go over the garage door, I think those weighed 300 pounds easily. So not a lot of fun lifting it by yourself. On the porch I did experience that though. I framed the porch by myself and had a pretty interesting method of getting these beams. So as you see, there's 4 posts that hold this up, right? And so this beam across there is a lot of work to put up by yourself. I used a system of ladders to kind of systematically lift it up on both sides and get it up into place. So yeah, that was a little bit exciting for me by myself. Beyond that, so yeah, if you've ever done any framing, modern building code requires a lot of structural hardware, hurricane clips, you've got wall plates, and there's all kinds of fasteners that are required now by the code per the architect specs. This strengthens the building. And so, I mean, one of the examples I have here, these are things that didn't pop up in the plans that I was corrected on by the inspector later, but you can see how I have all these blocks that go up the building. So for every seam I have on these 4x8 sheets, I had to put these blocks so that I put these backwards, as you can tell originally, but these plates here are supposed to be on the outside and they run the entire length of the building. And that just gives it some more rigidity for wind shear. A lot of these buildings are built about wind shear, so it's all about strengthening the wall as much as you can so it doesn't do this in the wind. And so that takes a lot of time. I mean, I want to say I probably spent a good 20 hours, 30 hours. I lost track of the amount of time I spent just putting nails into these little clips that are on everything. You've got them on every joist. I think I can go up here and show you these ones as well. But yeah, so every joist has a hurricane clip that I've put on there, and each one of those hurricane clips has I think 8 nails each, and then you've got these plates back there. So yeah, interesting stuff like that, and those are they're everywhere. You've also got endless amounts of blocking, like all this blocking that goes along every joist. You have that for every gap in the sheathing to strengthen the sheathing edges to nail it down to. And so yeah, when people talk about how they framed a building in a few days or whatever, they're only talking about the walls. And the part that always gets left out is the less glamorous, tedious nailing that goes into everything. And so that's where a lot of the framing time goes into. But yeah, if you're building things to code, that's important to look at. And it's on your building plans, you'll find it there. Just make sure you read it a lot. I would say I spent hundreds of hours reading my building plans, and I definitely missed some things And things that popped up literally a year after we built the thing, like, oh, I was supposed to do that when an inspector brings it to your attention. Like, oh, okay, well, we missed that, we'll go back and do that. And so yeah, there's a lot of little details that pop up that you won't know about until you've been told about them. So you can see along here, I've got all these large blocks with the bird screen on them to keep them out. So that's one of those items that I failed on inspection. What ended up happening was the truss manufacturer supplied me with 2x6s with cutouts. Those are pretty industry standard, but the sheathing, we didn't run the sheathing all the way up to them because I intended to put softening in anyways. Obviously the inspector said that's not going to happen. You need to fix that. He actually wanted me to tear the whole wall down or something. Oh, I had to tear all the sheathing off that was already nailed down so that we could do that properly, and then run the sheathing all the way up again so it was continuous. And instead, what I came up with was just, he was okay with was just replacing, knocking the existing blocks out and putting these bigger blocks in. So I had to go through and drill these holes out on every single one of these. You know, but it was an easier fix than ripping the whole wall down just to fix the sheathing issue. So yeah, that's another thing. If you've never framed before, be prepared for, I forgot I have a light in here now. Be prepared for little hiccups like that in your plans. You're going to have a lot of things like nailing schedules. You know, you're inspected on how many nails you put in and what type of nails that you use. They will make sure that you're using sheathing nails and not framing nails, for example. They want you to use the head with the right type of nail on the top of it, and then they'll make sure that you're not sinking it too deeply, and that you've got enough nails on the edges and then on the joists. I think in my schedule it's like 12 on center on the joists going between the sheathing. That's, for example, here's a roof. So, you know, this area is 12 on center, and I think this is 6 on center on our roof sheathing, for example. So little codes like that, important to pick up on the plans. One of the biggest struggles that I had doing this myself was the sheathing, though. Because remember, once again, when you build a wall on the ground and lift it with a wall jack, you can sheath it on the ground. But because of my stubbornness to do it my way, I had to go, this is the tall side of the building, where I've got 4-foot foundation walls. And so these top sheathings up here, I had to get those up cleverly because I didn't have help. I didn't have scaffolding yet. And so I had to use some creative thinking. So I used a pulley and a rope and a drywall clamp. I can show that in a little bit if I go get one. A drywall clamp, and I grabbed onto the plywood and I would hoist it up. So it was relatively safe. In the worst case, it falls. I lost a sheet of plywood. I think I only dropped one and it was still usable. But beyond that, yeah, it's kind of sketchy. So just be thankful if you have help, because that's what they're saving you from, is those sketchy ideas. But I got it done, it worked. Other issues that I had with my framing were strong backs. I was failed on one of my inspections because these were on the plans. So I added extra strong backs. I have 2 types of strong backs here. I have these horizontals, and then I've got these diagonals that run up even inside those joists as well. So several types of strong backs here. I think in our county that's required if the roof is the trusses are over 6 feet high, and I've got, I think these are 8 feet high on the peak, and so yeah, for over 6 feet we have to have strong backs. So check with your local building codes regarding that, but that did cost me an inspection. I don't think there's actually any cost in failing an inspection here, but anyways. I think final note on framing, you've got, you know, you'll see in these trusses I've got all these diagonal braces. They run, you know, along the walls here, and then they run along the joists out there. Those are optional, not the right word. They're kind of required, but they aren't on any kind of plans, and so you can kind of run them however you want to. It just strengthens everything up. This up here they call the rat run, and this runs along the entire top of the building. It's just a 2x4 that kind of ties the trusses together. Very thankful for that in the beginning. I haven't talked about truss installation yet, but that was probably the most dangerous part of the entire job, specifically because the day that we installed trusses, it was snowing and sleeting, and we probably had 20 or 30 mile an hour winds blowing, and so the trusses were just spinning around in the air, and we're just trying to grab them and nail them down and not die. So once again, a lot of guys will have friends come over and they might lift them up onto the ceilings themselves. They might even use some, you know, small equipment to lift them up there. We had a crane, but the problem with attic trusses is they are a lot heavier than a standard scissor truss, and so I think these ones weighed 300 pounds or more per truss. Quite a lot to deal with coming down from the sky, so yeah, not something you want to be hitting the head with at all, that's for sure. But anyways, we survived. that's kind of the story of the entire project. So I think the dangerous stuff is mostly done now. Painting's relatively straightforward. I'm only going to mention it just because, you know, the struggles that were involved. Like a dummy, I didn't level this off until recently. So at the time I did this, this was probably a 2-foot valley in the ground. So we had some precarious scaffolding all up and through here, and you know, we were using ladders and planks, and just, it was a lot harder than it needed to be, because now that I've got this all leveled, it probably would not have been that much of a headache to begin with. And then just to go back over here, you can also see these are some of the trees that I cut. One second, let me zoom in. So these are some of the trees that I cut down. This was the first one I cut down. You know, it's probably a good 12-inch diameter, and this was the bigger, older one right here. So this one's got a, you know, more like a, it could be 3 or 4 feet. It's actually 2 trunks, but this one's probably 2 feet, you know, 18 inches. Pretty good sized tree for what it's worth. But as you can see, this is kind of what we're dealing with here. I guess I'll put myself into perspective. One second. So when I had to come out here and run my planks and sheathing up here, I mean, that's a good, you know, 16 feet up there or more, and just not a lot of fun on a sloped, you know, this is soft soil with a slope for my ladders, and just the only thing we had down here at the time was a lot of pokey branches, so it was certain death to a spike pit if you fell on it. But OSHA's not watching this, are they? But yeah, that's most of my personal struggles regarding the project and what had to be done, or what still has to be done. Some of the other oops, I had a couple more oops stories. And this is where I'm going to give you a word of caution. If you're hiring contractors and you are the one building the building, basically you've assumed the role as a general contractor. Remember, the general contractor's job is essentially to be the manager of the entire project. And so in my case, I hired these concrete contractors. As you guys happen to watch this, I'm not blaming you for this, but ultimately I accept responsibility for what happened. But just make sure that you go over the plans with them and they understand what has to be done. And this includes, specifically in concrete, your hardware. So in my case, these giant bolts here are specifically what I'm talking about. These are called hold-down bolts. I have 2 of these giant ones that are 1.5 inches in diameter. One on each side of the garage door, mostly because this garage door is a giant opening in the sheathing, which means that you don't have a lot of rigid strength there, and so it's considered a weak spot in the building, and so they have those hold downs there. I don't know how many parts of the country have this as code, but here on the West Coast at least it is pretty much code. And then we have smaller hold downs, for example, over here by the door. Now, what happened with my scenario is they didn't put the hold downs in, and those are big bolts. Those go down almost 3 feet into the substructure there, and so I had to pay my engineers to give me a plan on how to fix that problem later on, so that was exciting. But about a week of drilling through concrete later, following their specs and plans, we got it done. But once again, headaches that I would avoid forever. If I ever had to do this again, I would make sure that every one of those hold-down bolts gets put in properly. Same as your anchor bolts. Just little details that could be a giant headache if you decide to not let it be done right the first time by sheer negligence. It just, my assumption, you know, you're hiring guys, they know what they're doing, you figure that they'll just do their job. But I mean, I guess I'm not dogging them still, but you know, other little details they missed that I should have caught was, you know, the garage door that was poured. This is a 16-foot door, and they poured it at 8 feet, and they also didn't put a opening for the man door, and so they had to cut that out and then this out to make it fit. So just things that I wasn't paying enough attention to when the forms were being set. So make sure that when the forms are set the day before they pour it, you get everything checked off as done properly, because I had relied on the building inspector that they were going to do that for me. That's kind of the building inspector's job, and well, lo and behold, they didn't catch it either. So just make note of that you as the general contractor are ultimately responsible for those little hiccups. Yes, I could have thrown a giant fit and made them pay for it and whatever, but I decided to take responsibility for it because it was kind of my fault. So that's the kind of guy I am, I guess. Moving forward, other things that I did wrong that I would advise doing again is this garage door was a giant mess up. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a nice garage door, very beautiful in that regard. This was not the style of door that I wanted. This is, you know, kind of a modern style. The idea was to have more of a carriage house door, but what ended up happening was when I framed this, there was no guidance on the framing for the garage door, and so I went off of what I was, mind you, I worked in a door factory for an early part of my career. So going by interior doors, you always make them to a certain size, right? And that size is to add the jamb width to make it to a certain width. Now, according to the internet, on garage doors, you don't do that. You cut them to be the exact width of the door. The misinterpretation I think I was getting off the internet was that you cut the jamb width to be the size of the garage door or whatever, and then that way you're closing the gap. But the actual garage door still needs that same thing. It needs to have the jamb width added to it. And so the point is that whatever your garage door measurement is, I think you're supposed to add, don't quote me on this because I might have forgotten, but I think it's 3 inches. And so I cut this to measurement, which is 16 feet on center, and it should have been 16'3". And so because of that, the garage door company had told me that they couldn't get me a garage door with windows. At the time I needed a windows because I didn't have any power. This building has been there for a year now, and I just got power to it finally now, mostly because it wasn't required, but you know, I'm trying to refinish my driveway, and so to get power back in, I'm off topic, I'll get back to that. Beyond that, the problem was without having power though, so I was opening and closing this door manually for the last year, and so I wanted lights, and the lights were provided by these windows and that window. So I wanted that, I also wanted it for the looks. So the problem that they were telling me was that because in a carriage door style, you've got these vertical slats, right? They go like this, and they're kind of perfect squares. And so they can cut those down. But for whatever reason, the garage door company told me they can't cut the window sizes down. I guess these are just factory specs of what sizes they are. I think if you threw a big enough fit, maybe you could, but it probably involved a lot of money. But they were told they couldn't make these smaller for me, so what I would have had was basically, let's say, just use an exaggerated number, let's say I would have had 3-foot squares with 4-foot tall windows on top. And ultimately, the garage door guy told me, I won't sell you that door because it's going to look stupid. And I was like, you know what, you're probably right, that's going to look stupid. So no help from him, but I figured out on the end that the best way to solve that problem was just to change the style of door and run my windows vertically instead of horizontally. And so the point is that this door costs a lot more than it needed to do. It was a bigger headache than it needed to be, all because some dummy framed it wrong. Fire that guy. Anyways, so yeah, make sure that you get that framed right if you ever do that. Don't make that mistake. It kind of causes headaches later. But yeah, that's all done. Now let's talk about the wiring process, because that's another headache that I just finished. So yes, on the wiring process. So now when we first started this project, I was warned we might not be able to get power to the building without running new power. That's our power source right there off that big pole. And if we were maxed out, turns out we weren't, but if we were going to have to trench all along these arborvitaes, under these trees here and over to there. Would have just cost a lot more money because frankly I think PG alone will charge us $5,000 just to plug in alone, adding to that the trenching costs and et cetera, et cetera. Just getting this process done though, what we ended up doing was, turns out that we had 400 amp service, but we had a 200 amp panel, so we just needed to upgrade the panel, or in this case we changed our main meter out for a meter main. And so this is the size difference between, this is our old panel right here, you can see. Maybe not, as I can't get far enough away. As you can see here, sorry, that's the old panel, that's the new panel. And so a meter main is quite larger, and this puts the breaker shutoff switch on the outside and allows us to grab power off the main right here and divert it that way. And so we had to dig a trench out to there. Easy to do because the driveway is unfinished currently and mostly gravel, so that just, point is if I was going to finish this, the driveway, sorry, you want to put your trench in before you finish the driveway because otherwise you're just stepping on your own toes. So anyways, that's all done. That's kind of the electrical headache. Anyways, yeah. So those are my tips and problems building my barn. So hopefully if you're building one yourself, you will have less problems than I did because frankly, I've already took the hit for you. So anyways, hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something maybe. Maybe you just like looking at barns, I don't know. Anyways, happy trails, thanks for watching.